GoForThe2.com in with the Week 3 predictions. Let's jump right into it. Classic ACC battle. It's Florida State and Syracuse. You look at Florida State over the last couple of weeks, not a very good showing under new head coach Willie Taggart. Lost to Virginia Tech Week 1, got blown out at home, failed to move the football within the red zone, and then followed that up with a lackluster win by 10 points over FCS opponent Stanford. They needed a pick six with a minute left to seal that victory. This is a Florida State defense that gave up 334 passing yards per game and is going to be going up against a very high-powered offense in Eric Dungey and Syracuse. Syracuse averaging 274 rushing yards per game, also averaging 233 passing yards through the air. And they have one of the most underrated quarterbacks in the nation in Eric Dungey. He's a dual threat. He can put pressure on Florida State's defense on the perimeter, also attack them over the top, and I think that's the matchup that you want to see play out this coming Saturday. But the matchup that I like is Deondre Francois. That speed of Florida State, to me, will be the difference. This is a Florida State defense overall that's still only allowing 81 rushing yards per game. They have the speed to run sideline to sideline to contain Syracuse's offense in this ballgame. And when you look at Deondre Francois as a whole, he's completing 63% of his passes, 553 yards, 3 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. He's going to be going up against a defense in Syracuse that's allowing 313 passing yards per game. You can look at that Week 1 battle against Western Michigan and their quarterback, John Wozniak. They put up big plays vertically over the top of Syracuse's defense. Expect the same for Florida State this coming weekend. This is an offense in Florida State that's averaging 274 passing yards per game. They're only pounding the rock for 114 yards on the ground. But Cam Akers could be the difference. His speed on the perimeter going up against Syracuse's defensive front could be the matchup. You look at last year's battle, Cam Akers and that offense rushed for over 200 yards. He had a career day, and that's what propelled them to the 3-point win in Tallahassee. I know Florida State hasn't looked good, but this is a road conference game. Forget the last 2 weeks. Willie Taggart will have this team focused. And more importantly, the speed of Florida State offensively and defensively will be the difference. Deondre Francois, he's a battle-tested quarterback. He's played in some big games. He will not be rattled by the atmosphere in the Carrier Dome. I like Florida State on the road here. I think it's a high-scoring game. But in the end, Florida State picks up a 14-point victory, 48-34 over Syracuse in this battle. Let's keep it in the state of Florida. Florida and Colorado State. Florida, unbelievable loss to Kentucky last week, 27-16. They allowed a 31-game winning streak over the Wildcats to be snapped in that battle. This is a team in Florida that's got a lot of pressure on them right now. They just broke a streak of 31 straight games. What is the mindset of Dan Mullen and the Florida Gators heading into this matchup? On the flip side, you have a Colorado State team that was left for dead. They were down 27-9 to Arkansas at home and rallied to win that ball game 33-27. They held Arkansas and that high-powered Chad Morris offense to only 5 of 15 on third down conversions. This is a Colorado State offense led by KJ Carter-Samuels that has completed 64% of his passes, 1,102 yards, 8 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. It's an offense in Colorado State that's averaging 384 passing yards per game. Mike Bobo, the coach, used to coach in the SEC. He understands what to expect in the swamp going up in this atmosphere. And you can look at Mike Bobo going up against SEC defenses. Last year, Colorado State put up 23 points on that Alabama defense in Tuscaloosa. You look at Florida, they allowed 309 rushing yards last week to Kentucky. They're giving up 264 rushing yards per game. I like the matchup, even though Colorado State is not running the football right now, only averaging 89 rushing yards per game. I think their ability to spread out Florida's defense is the difference, opens up running lanes for Izzy Matthews later in that ball game. And in the end, Florida wins a very close ball game, 30-23 over the Rams. Expect Colorado State to be in this ball game from start to finish. They're a team that has a lot of emotion. They'll be up and ready and loose for this ball game. On the other side, Florida could come out tight and flat. A lot of pressure. They've been hearing it all week by their fan base that they let a 31-game winning streak snap in their home stadium. How does that affect the mindset of the Florida Gators heading into this ball game? Another intriguing battle is a Big 12 game between Oklahoma and Iowa State. It's a game in last year in Iowa State that struck the upset 38-31 over the Sooners in Norman. It's a team in Oklahoma that dominated UCLA last week by 28 points, 48 to 14 in that matchup. But this is a team that lost their starting running back, Rodney Anderson, to a knee injury. When you look at Kyler Murray, he's putting up dynamic stats, completed 64% of his passes, 650 yards, 6 touchdowns, 1 interception, and he's going to be going into a hornet's nest in terms of Ames, Iowa. Not an easy place to play with a solid head coach in Matt Campbell. You look at Iowa State last week, first game of the year, they struggled moving the football against a very solid Iowa team. Lost that matchup 13-3, but they held Nathan Stanley in check, held that Iowa offense to only about 105 rushing yards in that battle and 160 passing yards in that game. And they, more importantly, held Iowa to 30% on third down conversions. When you look at Iowa State's offense, a very experienced quarterback in Kyle Kemp, he completed 71% of his passes. They have a big play running back in David Montgomery that can be utilized in the short to intermediate passing game. You look at that game in Norman last year, Montgomery caught 7 passes for 87 yards in that battle. That could be the matchup. David Montgomery going up against nickelbacks and linebackers in that matchup could be the difference for Iowa State to move the football against that Sooners defense. When you look at this ball game as a whole, statistically, I give the edge and the coaching advantage to Matt Campbell. I think he's a better head coach than Lincoln Riley at this point in his career, even though Lincoln Riley succeeded, had a senior quarterback in Baker Mayfield last year. This will be his first true test as matching, I want to say comparable coaching week number 1. I think the edge goes to Matt Campbell. In the end, I give the edge to Oklahoma on the field. I think they win this ball game 33-24. Oklahoma escapes with a 9-point win over Iowa State, but they're in this ball game from start to finish. Oklahoma just has a little more speed on the outside. Expect Trey Sermon, expect Lamb and Marquise Brown to be the difference. But in the end, Iowa State pushes Oklahoma to the limit. Oklahoma picks up a 9-point win on the road in Ames this coming Saturday. Another intriguing battles in the SEC. It's LSU, it's Auburn. Auburn, since 2000, is 10-2 at home against LSU and have won those 10 games by 9.2 points per game. Since 2011, though, LSU is 5-2 over Auburn and has won those 5 games by 15.8 points per game. You look at this matchup last year, Auburn jumped up to a big first half lead, 23-3 over LSU before Dave Aranda and that defense made adjustments. They rallied for a 27-23 win in Death Valley. Now they go on the road and they face an up-tempo offense led by Jarrett Stidham. Had a dominant week 1 effort against Washington, followed that up with another dominant effort against an FCS opponent last week. But this is an SEC game. Give the physicality edge from what I've seen to LSU. Been more impressed with the offensive and defensive lines of the Tigers than I have at Auburn at this point in the season. Think the rushing attack of LSU is the difference. Look for Brossett and, more importantly, Edwards-Helaire to break out in this ballgame. Joe Burrows looked calm and cool in the new scheme, and I give the defensive edge to Dave Aranda and that secondary going up against Jarrett Stidham. I think that's the difference. I think LSU picks up a 24-20 win on the Plains in Auburn. It's not going to be easy, but look for LSU to make just enough plays to pick out this victory 24-20 over Auburn in this ballgame. Another intriguing battle taking place in Raleigh between Will Grier and West Virginia and NC State and Ryan Finley. This is going to be a dynamic game when you look at Will Grier overall completing 76% of his passes, over 700 yards. He's got already 9 touchdowns, 1 interception, and he's going to be going up against Ryan Finley and a high-powered NC State offense. This is an offense led by Ryan Finley that's completed 74% of his passes, 639 yards. He does have 4 touchdowns and 1 interception, and he has 3 big play wide receivers in Myers, Thomas, and Harmon that have combined for 36 receptions, 450 receiving yards, and 2 receiving touchdowns. Raleigh's not an easy place to play, and more importantly, you look at the NC State's defense. I like their physicality and run support. I like their ability to force teams to work down the field, especially playing at home. Dave Doran's a solid head coach. So is Dana Holgorsen, but I give the edge to the home team here. I look at NC State. Their ability to run the football more effectively up against West Virginia's defense, to me, is the difference. And in the end, I think it's going to be a shootout. 38-34, NC State picks up a 4-point win over Will Grier and the crew this coming weekend. Another intriguing battle is Virginia and Ohio. Virginia struggled last week, 20-16 over Indiana. Ohio picked up a 38-32 win over Howard. They benched starting quarterback Nathan Rourke. He played the first quarter and then gave way to Maxwell, the backup. He's supposed to be the starter in this ball game. But you look at this Ohio defense overall. They allowed 484 passing yards to Howard last week. This is a defense that by Ohio that has struggled under Frank Solich in recent years. He was known as a solid defensive head coach. Over the last few years, that defense has been suspect against teams that could stretch them vertically. You look at Virginia's offense overall, they're converting 51% on third down conversions. Their quarterback, Bryce Perkins, seems very calm and collected in the system. He's rushed for over 200 yards and 2 rushing touchdowns, also averaging about 200 passing yards per game. But it comes down to the defense on the offense and defensive lines for Virginia. I like the way they played against Indiana last week. I think they stepped up, and for me, that's the difference. I think they're the more complete team, better head coach in Bronco Mendenhall. I think they win this ball game in Charlottesville by 17 points, 37-20. Virginia gets a quality 17-point win over the Ohio Bobcats this coming weekend. Stay with me all season long at GoForThe2.com.